you will look at this and you'll say right away, oh, Elizabeth, it's Tiffany, right? It has that look. It has that Lures Comfort Tiffany look. Now, let's talk about copyright. Because when we talk about copyright, there's a period of time in which the United States decided that things could be copyrighted. And does anyone know the date when we started to think about copyright? Well, it was right at the first quarter of the 20th century. And up to that time, if you made something and the public liked it, well, you could copy such a thing. And so, although they look like Tiffany, I don't see any Tiffany mark. And Via and I just both agreed that Tiffany has a, how can I explain this? This is why I think it's so difficult to buy things online, because you can't feel the weight. You can't smell the bronze. They should be bronze if they're Tiffany. They should have a weight to them if they're Tiffany. The slag glass should be a little more subtle if they're Tiffany. They could be Tiffany, but I doubt it. And I think they're a Tiffany knockoff. They're just too lightweight, but they have a great look. What is the look called? Art Nouveau. And then some people will say arts and crafts. That's another definition. And you know, we're talking about the first quarter of the 20th century when things like this were happening. And it's interesting because all the things that happen in Art Nouveau as a period in American cultural history happens first in metalware. It's a very unique time. It happens first in jewelry, in things like this. It's always breaking through in the metalware, and that's because, well, I don't want to insult John, our photographer. That's because so many women were being trained in metalwork. And all the great copper artists and metal artists at the first quarter of the 20th century were all women. And they did beautiful, beautiful metalwork. You know, Tiffany and some of the arts and crafts studios employed women to do the metalwork. So this is Tiffany's style. I will say that there's some what we call losses, so the slag glass is damaged. So, you know, we would be putting these around $400 the pair. So right now we know that we're right, that it's not Tiffany because Seth Thomas did not make for Tiffany. You know, Tiffany didn't always mark their clocks Tiffany, by the way. There were other jewelers making their clocks, but somehow Seth Thomas wasn't one of them. So yeah, this was what we call that. Oh, what's the name for a set of things that goes on the mantel?
I don't know.
Metal piece. What's the name when you get a fancy dinner and there's a piece of parsley? Garnish. Mantel garnish. That's what it's called. It's a mantel garnish. So the clock and the candlesticks are the mantel garnish, or garni, I guess is the plural, isn't it? So what we have always on the mantelpiece is really interesting metaphor, because if you study, like I do, I study material culture and the symbolism of material culture. It's the center of the house. There are two things at the center of the house that is represented by the clock and the candlesticks. What are they? Now, time and heat and light. Yeah, illumination and time. And that is usually the mantelpiece. And people always assume that it never was any different, but it starts from a philosophy, a psychology, that at the center of the house there's light and heat and time.